Teachers of Reddit, have you ever had a student try to seduce you? What happened? Yes, finally the chance to tell this. I'm a female high school teacher, and once during my second year of teaching, I was 24, one of my male students came in before school. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. He seems nervous. Sure, I said. He pulled a chair up in front of my desk and sat down. "I'm in love," he said. He then grabbed my hand and started to stroke my palm with his index finger. I yanked my hand back and may have screamed "ack" at the time. "I'm much older than you," I said. "It doesn't matter. I have a boyfriend." "It doesn't matter. Leave and go with me." "No." I finally got him to leave my room and then immediately ran down the hall to tell the school social worker, my department chair, and every teacher friend I had, just so I couldn't get nailed on it later. It was not the most serious seduction attempt ever, but it took me by complete surprise and was probably the most awkward conversation of my life. And as a teacher, trust me, I have a lot of awkward conversations. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. My observations as a male high school teacher. You won't be propositioned as much as the female teachers, but it will still happen. Though the majority of the crushes will be silent. You will also almost certainly be under scrutiny of a lawyer at least once in your career, but good news, it'll probably be about a special ed student's accommodations. My personal experience was, I had a student ask in the middle of class what I would do if someone started a rumor that I had gotten a student pregnant. I told her the question was inappropriate, and felt pretty uncomfortable the rest of the class. I got someone to cover my next period and talked to a principal and a counselor. The principal was mainly worried about documenting interactions with the kid in case of a lawsuit. The school counselor simply pulled the kid out of my class, and lawyers never got involved. I don't know if that constitutes as harassment or not, but holy crap did that kid make me uncomfortable. Like on a serious, do I really want to continue this career level? I've only twice been called into the office to file a statement. Once because another teacher was suspected of having an affair with one of my students, and once because I got knocked on my butt while trying to break up a fight. And they wanted to know if I wanted to press charges. I didn't. Story 3. I teach middle school, so I have had a few boys with crushes. One boy would use his lunch money and buy me a cup of coffee and bring it to me. Had to call home, and it was a very funny/awkward parent conversation. Another boy would always tell his teacher he had lessons, I'm a music teacher, and come down to see me if I needed help. Again, I had to send him back and talk to his parents. The most awkward and uncomfortable one was this boy viola player, Steven. He would compliment me and always say borderline inappropriate things. I talked to guidance, but I was one of the few teachers that could get him to do anything, so they would ask me to try and mentor him. I called home, but no parents around, just grandparents who spoke Spanish. Then he started trying to put his arm around me and got uncomfortably close to me. I had to go to guidance counselor again and get them involved because it was bad. He couldn't switch classes because I'm the only orchestra teacher, and he was actually quite a good player. One day he comes to lessons and says, "Well, I'm a man now, Mrs. Whatever. Come sit next to me and let me show you." Welp, I had to ask him to leave. Again, guidance meetings because I could never get in touch with any of his parents. Turned out he went to a party and got a blowy by 2 girls at the same time and was bragging about it. Finally had a meeting with parents, as well as principals and a translator. He was suspended for the rest of the year since I was not the only person he was inappropriate with. Mind you, the kid is in 8th grade, so like 13. He is now in jail at 19 for assault. It's really sad, actually. With the language barrier on the parents, yeah, that's really tough. You can't even see if it's like the parents' fault because you don't really know how they act or anything, and you don't know what to do about the situation. All you do know is there's this 13-year-old kid being way too creepy. Story 4. This is my father's story, so probably couldn't happen now like it did in the 70s. But at my father's high school graduation, the entire class knew of one student that had a crush on a female teacher. She had skipped a few grades and become a teacher early, so she was about 6 years older than him. At the graduation ceremony, the teachers were all lined up to shake each student's hand. This particular student went across shaking their hands and then planted a hand on each cheek and full mouth kissed the teacher on which he had a crush. It was considered a joke and everyone laughed as he received a light slap for the prank. Today, the two are married with 3 children. Story 5. This happened to me several times with the same girl. She was constantly failing and at the end of the 6 weeks would become flirty. Her biggest thing would be to ask if there were any way she could pass the 6 weeks, and then press her breasts against my arm. I would ask her to get off me and she would comply. Nothing came of it. She was a disgusting, vile young woman who I was continually repulsed by. I documented the incidents, reported them to my AP and principal, and asked that she be removed from my class, but nothing was ever done. The school I worked at was low performing, and attendance was a huge issue. so they weren't about to suspend her. Story 6. I teach 11th and 12th grade. When I first started teaching, I was 22, so my students were only 4 to 6 years younger than me. I had one girl, a senior, stop me in the hallway and say, "Mr. Name, I want you and I will have you." I just sort of laughed and walked away. Another time, the same girl was being very loud at play auditions. So I poked my head through the curtain and said, "Hey, why are you being so loud?" Her response, "Why are you so attractive?" The other teachers helping out with the play were female and couldn't stop laughing. I was kinda irked, though, because that seemed like a double standard. Both times it occurred, I reported it to my principal right away. Another female student would routinely unbutton the top of her blouse and come to my desk and lean over to talk to me. She's a stripper now, actually invited me to come see her strip. Again, reported this to the principal right away. My funniest one, though, was this 19-year-old Russian exchange student. I walked into my classroom and she was sitting at my desk in my chair with my pointer. I asked her what she was doing, and right in front of the whole class, she replied with this coy smile, "I'm playing with your stick." The class thought it was hilarious, and in hindsight it was, but goddamn, it was awkward. Still, I've noticed that the female students never receive any consequences for this, which is odd. Story 7. My first year, I was 23. I taught seniors. I always heard talks about how every girl at the high school had a crush on me, especially my actual students. Well, all year long I hear about how so-and-so has a crush on you, and was always worried about being approached by one of my students once they started to turn 18. And coincidentally, not being sarcastic, I became single around this time as well. Well, all year long, nothing really occurred other than subtle flirting, until prom season started to rear its head around the corner. During class, one of the more popular/attractive girls raised her hand and asked me randomly, "What kind of car do you drive?" And I respond, "Why do you want to know?" I usually respond to dumb/irrelevant questions during note-taking because sometimes it may lead to a good example. I taught government/econ. And she responds with, "Oh, I just wanted to know what kind of car I was going to get picked up for prom in." And I kind of react as if a huge tsunami wave was coming towards me and I'm trying to formulate my plan of attack. Just stand there and take the hit? Try to run away? Try to dive under and hope I can hold my breath long enough? Etc. So after a few seconds of student laughter, I respond with, "I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to take a student to prom." And she responds with, "Well, I'm legal, so it shouldn't be a problem." And that's when crap really hit the fan. Every single guy in that class had a crush on her and they started to laugh and holler, "Do it up, that's what's up," and so forth. I finally tell her once the class settles down, "No, it's not appropriate, but if you really want to go with someone that works here, ask the principal instead. He'll hook you up with free entry and pick you up in his stretch yellow limo." The class busts out laughing, and I quickly go back to the lesson. Honestly, that was probably the roughest 5 to 6 minutes of my life. I teach 6th grade now, so I'm glad that's no longer an issue. That is surprisingly forward. What was her game plan here? Did she think it would work? Did this girl really think she was hot enough stuff for someone to throw away their entire career for? Honestly, I'm kinda glad she got shut down. Sounds like she deserved it. Story 8. For context, I'm a male high school math teacher. This happened earlier on in my career. I used to run an after-hours tutoring session for any students that felt like they needed help understanding the material, or were just curious about the wonderful subject of math. I still run it, but I used to, too. It usually wasn't very busy, but I would typically get around 2 to 3 people. I find that one-on-one teaching is much more effective than 1-on-30. There was a point around June, about 2 weeks prior to exams, when a young lady from my 12th grade calculus and vectors class walked in and closed the door. The other students that I had tutored had already left. Now, I'm pretty professional about my job. I make an effort not to notice and certainly not act on any distinguishing physical characteristics in my students. Perhaps because of my relative youth, however, I could not help but observe that this particular student was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. A perfect 10 out of 10, as the saying goes. Red hair, green eyes, and a light dusting of freckles. More than that, though, she had more confidence than any teenager had a right to. Just the way she walked trumpeted it. Kind of a rolling of the hips and a graceful stride. It was quite attractive and much worse now that it was one-on-one. Despite my attraction, however, it was my responsibility as teacher to keep a cool head. So keep a cool head I did, or at least tried. She walked up to my desk with a smile. "Hello, I was wondering if I could get some help with this question." Of course, what's the problem? Cold and polite probably would have been my best bet, but I didn't want to risk scaring her away from the help. "I need the answer to limit whatever." The question was a limits problem. Just use the Maclaurin series centered 0. Though I knew how to answer it, I had made the question, I was having trouble completing it. The girl smelled like vanilla and it was very distracting. I persevered and finished answering the question. We ended up chatting idly for a while for God knows how long and about God knows what. The entire time I was trying to focus on breathing deep and staying professional. At a lull in the conversation, I finally broke in. Is there anything else I can help you with? I should really be getting home. Actually, teacher, I have a bit of a confession. She smiled shyly and batted her eyes a bit. I didn't come here solely to get the answer to that question. Oh? Oh, crap. She walked slowly to my side of the desk and laid her hand on my shoulder. It was only a light touch, but I was very aware. It felt like little bits of electricity were running from her into me. I actually have a bit of a crush. The look on her face when she said that will be forever imprinted in my mind. It was beautiful. A shy smile touching her lips, a blush reddening on her cheeks. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. She started to move her hand down my chest and toward my pants. My mind started to go blank. I knew this was wrong, but I was having a lot of trouble summoning the willpower to stop it. She got to the waistline, put her hand in, and gently squeezed me. I won't go into the details, but we ended up banging. Really great banging, to be honest. A couple of times in the classroom, but mostly at my house. We dated for a few months after she graduated, but it broke off when she went to university in another province. What I did was illegal. Be that as it may, I don't really regret it. The relationship I had with her was the most passionate and friskily satisfying I have ever been in. I've never gotten into trouble with the law. Her and I left on good terms. Look, this is just like one kind of kink I never understood. Teachers never did it for me. I don't get it. I guess it's because of like the power structure thing. They're teaching you, they're above you in some way, I don't know. But also that's exactly what makes it wrong, so I don't know, I don't get it. I'm kind of hoping this story is fake because it sounds weird, but it also sounds like neither of them are worse off for it, so fine, I guess. Story 9. Kind of. It seems like seduction implies some kind of skill, so I wouldn't go that far, but I taught 12th grade English. I had one student who seemed to just really like me. He would do things like show up before class with a coffee for me. Whenever he would make a frisky joke to another student, he would glance at me and say, "Right, Miss T?" Then he started writing really explicit things in his class journal about an older woman he wanted to do things to. I never commented. When he asked if I read it, I would just say, "Yep," and that was that. It kind of came to a head when he was about to turn 18 and invited me to his birthday party. It was supposedly at a local strip club, and he didn't know that I knew that when he told me the name of the place. He kept saying, "Come on, Miss T, you're the only one I really want to be there with." He kept going on and on about it during class, so I finally said that he needed to stay with me after class. Retrospectively, I hope he didn't get the wrong idea. So he stayed and I said, "Brian, you're a great student and you're fun and smart, but I am your teacher, and I could get my butt fired if any weird rumors popped up about me being inappropriate with a student. Don't get me fired, okay?" He took it seriously through the whole year, until prom, when he came to class in a tux and with a flower for me and asked me to be his date. I laughed it off and said, "Well, I have to chaperone, so I will be there anyway." I didn't chaperone, but he seemed satisfied with my answer. Last day of school, he asked for a hug, and I gave him one. Then I said something like, "There are lots of TAs in college," and sent him on his way. Story 10. I am not a teacher, but I blatantly flirted with one of my senior year elective class high school teachers, young male Mr. M. Most of the time I was just saying frisky things about him and what I wanted to do to him, but whispering them to my friend in front of me. The way the classroom was set up, my desk was directly below a map that he would always point to point things out. Needless to say, I did not look at that map once and stared at his crotch, which was probably less than a foot away from my face. I'm sure he noticed. Mr. M would tell stories about himself quite often in class, so I learned things about him. For Christmas, I bought him a card and a bag of his favorite candy. I would email him whenever I found something, probably on Reddit, that pertained to the class, and have left accidental winky faces instead of regular smileys. The story that hands down takes the cake is this, though. It's kind of a long-ish story, so I will try to keep it as short as possible. My friend and I would write notes to each other. My notes would mostly have a part in them saying something frisky about Mr. M. Well, my friend happens to lose one of my notes in the hallway, and our principal finds it on the ground and reads it. I got called out of my second hour class to go to his office with my counselor, leaving out mostly unimportant information here. The note my principal found happened to be the worst note I have ever written. My counselor and principal asked me over and over if Mr. M had ever tried anything with me, ever came on to me, etc. I said over and over again that no, he didn't. It was just me having a crush on him. I didn't get in trouble for this, but they told me they had to tell Mr. M that a female student wrote a note about him, and they probably told him what the context of said note was. I still to this day do not know if they told Mr. M that it was me who wrote the note, and I will never know unless someone asks him. The content of the note? If Mr. M and I do not bang, I will go to his house, kidnap him, and assault him. That note? Pretty yikes. Can't lie, OP. That's super weird. Probably shouldn't have written that. Story 11. I was a graduate teaching assistant. I was meeting with an undergraduate student about a poor test grade, which wasn't uncommon as the professor often lets students improve test grades. She came in wearing a tracksuit, the kind you might wear to the gym, not so much anything else that required modesty. The top was unzipped, displaying her, impressive breasts, which were clearly meant to be on display. She stated she was willing to do anything to improve her grades. For one brief, glorious moment, a multitude of scenarios ran through my mind. After that one brief, glorious moment, I walked her out of my office and into the professor's office without saying a word. I don't know if she was seriously offering what I thought she was, or if she just expressed herself poorly and had just come from the gym. I was in my third year of law school and I wasn't about to find out. Story 12. I had a troublemaking student last year who was a constant thread of annoyance. One of the things I do when I'm trying to refocus a student when they're acting a fool is to stare at them and give them a WTF kind of look. Usually works. Well, one day this student decided to confront me about my looks after school. Her and one of her friends show up at my door. As a policy, I don't speak to students alone, so I bring my neighbor into the room with me. Why do you always look at me funny? I don't always look at you. You're a student in my class. I have 27 other kids that need my attention as much as you. Well, you're always giving me a look like this. And then she does a slightly frisky take on the WTF face. Well, if I'm giving you a look, it's probably because you're not on task and I'm trying to get you on task without calling out your name in front of everyone. Her friend starts laughing and she looks dejected. Well, my mom said if she ever saw you, she would cuss you out. Student slams my door. Me and my neighbor have a little giggle over the girl's first heartbreak, and then write a report. Gotta love middle school. Story 13. I was a substitute teacher a few years back. One night I went to a party with some friends, and ended up making out with a really cute blonde. A few days later, I was subbing for a high school class, and who should walk in but said blonde? She had neglected to say that she was still in high school and certainly didn't look it. So this caught me by surprise. I was hoping nothing would be said, but as soon as the bell rang, her friend, who she had been whispering to, exclaimed, "You made out with the teacher?" So much for subtlety. To make it worse, she was smiling and sending me texts throughout the entire class period, saying, "You look really cute. When are we getting together again?" I never saw her again and nothing ever came of it, but it was the most uncomfortable hour of my life. Why does it sound like everyone in these stories is just really trying to get in trouble? I mean the students, not the teachers. The teachers are like, "Oh God, please don't let me lose my job." And the students are all, "Let's get it on, teacher." It's just weird to me. Does this happen? Maybe it's just because I went to a private school or something. People were less well, no, private schools have a worse reputation for that kind of thing, don't they? I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't very observant. Story 14. When I was student teaching, I don't remember getting hit on or anything, but I do have a related story. One day we had a field day that was not an innuendo after exams. 98% of my students passed, by the way, and I walked up to a group of girls from my 9th grade history class. One girl was a crazy one. She once told me during lunch in the cafeteria that she was going to fart in class. She lived up to her warning. Anyway, I walked up to the girls and the crazy one asked me, "Mr. S, have you ever done it in the butt?" The question surprised me, obviously. The other girls laughed. They were all in on it. My guess is that they wanted to ask me a really weird question just to see what I would do. It was one of those instances that you can't have been taught or trained how to deal with. You just have to experience it. Luckily, I do my best thinking on my feet, and I responded with what was probably the best answer. I said, "That is an inappropriate question, but if you want to talk about that sort of thing, you should ask your parents." All the girls were grossed out. The lesson to be learned here is that if you want to get your kids to stop talking about intimate stuff, remind them that their parents do it. Story 15. I used to teach SAT classes for a prominent company, and the girls in my class, pretty much all juniors in high school, would awkwardly flirt with me pretty often. I was 19 at the time, so the age gap wasn't that huge, but it still caught me off guard every time. Some highlights. I was helping one girl with the essay portion and told her that she could include examples from her favorite books. So she looks up at me smiling and says, "You know what my favorite book is? You should really read it. It's 50 Shades of Grey." Another group of girls told me that they were seeing Magic Mike at the movie theater that day and were wondering if I wanted to join them. Same group asked if I wanted to go clubbing with them that night. Apparently there was a local club that had a weekly 19 and under night. A group of 2 girls and 2 guys didn't show up to class one day and came in the next day saying they wanted to apologize to me for skipping, so they got me a gift. I opened it up, and it was a 365 Days of Intimate Positions book. I don't know if this even constitutes as flirting. All of this kind of just sounds like they're playing jokes on the teacher. These don't sound like actual flirting attempts, right? Right? I know how to flirt, right?